Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. India's manufacturing sector sees continued robust growth in November. The strong performance is expected to carry forward into 2024. Defense chiefs of the United States, Australia and the UK meet in California. They stress on high-tech cooperation for deep space radar, AI and quantum computing systems. The space race intensifies in the Korean peninsula. South Korea launches its first military spy satellite after Pyongyang's launch of a surveillance satellite last week. Election results for 4 state assemblies of India to be declared on Sunday. People of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Telangana and Chhattisgarh wait with bated breath. India remains among the fastest growing major economies in the world, and India's manufacturing sector continued its momentum and witnessed growth during November. Abhishek Bose puts it into perspective.
India's manufacturing sector continues to see expansion for 29th month in a row. The data by the rating agency SP Global Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index or PMI survey shows India's PMI climbed to 56 and rebounded from 8-month low of 55.5 in October. Any survey prints below 50 indicate contraction, but India continued the growth momentum. SP Global says India is expected to lead growth in the Asia-Pacific region. The credit rating agency predicts India's GDP to reach 6.4% for the fiscal year ending March 2024, up from its previous forecast of 6%. India has performed well than other major economies. China's manufacturing PMI rose to 50.7 in November from 49.5 in October. The other Asian countries which witnessed manufacturing growth in November include Philippines, Indonesia, Qatar, Singapore and South Korea. Meanwhile, countries like Japan, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Israel and Vietnam witnessed manufacturing contraction with below 50 PMI. In Europe, Greece and Ireland witnessed a manufacturing expansion in November, while countries like the UK, Spain, Netherlands, Italy, France and Germany all observed manufacturing contraction in November with PMI below 50. The SP Global's manufacturing PMI survey report comes a day after India's National Statistical Office released the country's GDP growth data. India is currently the world's 5th largest economy and is on the track to become the world's 3rd largest economy with a projected GDP of $7.3 trillion by 2030.
एक दशक पहले भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था अत्यंत चिंताजनक अवस्था में थी। भारत को दुनिया के फ्रेजाइल 5 देशों में माना जाता था। दुनिया की अर्थव्यवस्था पर भारत, जहां विश्व की 1/6 आबादी रहती है, वो दुनिया पर एक बोझ था। दुनिया के देश चिंतित थे कि भारत फ्रेजाइल 5 से कैसे ऊपर आए। ये मात्र 1 दशक पहले की बात है और आज का नतीजा ये है कि हमने यूके को और फ्रांस को पीछे छोड़कर 2022 में एक महारत हासिल किया और भारत दुनिया की 5वीं बड़ी महाशक्ति बना।
Official GDP data says India's economy recorded a 7.6% growth in the second quarter of the current financial year, 2023-24.
The fact that the economy has grown at 7.2% last year and at 7.7% in the first half of this year is telling in itself. And if I look forward, with a 7.7% growth in the first half of the year, even with a 6.3% average in the second half of the year, India will grow at 7% this particular financial year. In general, I think because of the sui generis policy that India implemented, India had the self-confidence and the courage of conviction to chart its own path.
The rise in India's GDP growth can be attributed to increased government spending and strong performance in the manufacturing, mining and construction sectors. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
India's Minister of State for Skill Development, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, inaugurated the mega conference of chartered accountant students in Kozhikode on Saturday. The minister hailed India's digital economy and said that it is growing 2.5 times faster than the regular GDP.
Area of expertise, let me tell you, on digital economy, 2014, it was 4.5% of GDP. Now it is 11% of GDP, and by 2026, it will be 20% of GDP. You have unlimited opportunities to succeed and prosper.
The 7-day truce between Hamas terrorists and the Israeli Defense Forces ended on Saturday after Hamas refused to offer a list of further hostages to be released. The Israeli Defense Forces claim to have hit multiple Hamas targets in self-defense across the Gaza Strip. Mihir Makuri gives us a 360-degree perspective in this report.
Renewed fighting in Gaza stretched into a second day on Saturday after talks to extend a week-old truce with Hamas collapsed. In various video footage released by the Israeli army, soldiers were seen taking part in ground operations and airstrikes on Hamas targets in Gaza. The Israeli Defense Forces claim to have targeted multiple Hamas targets in self-defense across the Strip. On Saturday, Houthi fighters recruited to back up Hamas in its conflict with Israel paraded in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a before heading to the Gaza Strip. As the warring sides blame each other for the truce collapse, Israel blamed the end of the ceasefire on Hamas's Gaza leader Yahya Sinwar.
هناك عنوان واسم لهذا القرار.
Hamas refused to release more of the kidnapped Israeli women and children in opposition to their commitments to the mediators. There is a name to this decision, and it is Yahya Sinwar. He is the one who prefers to continue the torture of our hostages and to hold them in the non-humanitarian circumstances in violation of any international norms or religious morals.
Amid repeated appeals by the Israeli army for Gazans to leave northern Gaza, 58 trucks entered the Gaza Strip through the Rafah border crossing in an attempt to limit an unfolding humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, Israeli troops identified the body of one hostage and confirmed the death of 4 others seized by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, the military said on Friday. In a move to show support to the families of Israeli hostages, former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger met relatives of 3 people seized by Hamas in Israel and now held in Gaza. Among those meeting the Terminator star was Bar Rodef, whose father was taken from kibbutz. He said Schwarzenegger was one of his father's favorite actors.
You are one of my father's favorite actors. I remember watching Terminator's movie with him in the living room, and I know that when he comes back, it will put a smile on his face.
The 7-day truce, which began on the 24th of November and was extended twice, had allowed for the exchange of dozens of hostages held in Gaza for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and facilitated the entry of humanitarian aid into the shattered coastal strip. Now that hostilities have returned, diplomatic efforts are also continuing to restore Israel and Hamas to a state of truce. Mihir Makuri, reporting for DD India.
Well, you said that Hamas cannot have a future in...
Well, Mia Alberti now joins us from Beirut in Lebanon with an update. Mia, so hostilities have resumed, and Israel has also reported that Hamas has killed 5 hostages. What's the ground situation like?
Yeah, let me just update the report from our colleague that negotiations for the release of hostages are no longer ongoing, as we just saw in the last few hours. Israel pulling out their negotiating team from Qatar, where those negotiations were taking place, citing that Hamas has failed the terms of these agreements, these negotiations. And it seems like we don't have that much information yet, but it seems like it's connected to the lists of names of hostages that could be released. So we will keep that updated in the next few hours. Now, for the situation in the ground, I mean, we have to look at the numbers. We're talking about in the last 24 hours, in just one day, 400 attacks, more than 200 deaths, and more than 600 injured, with the UN saying that hell has returned on Gaza. We're seeing that most of these killed and injured are children and women. We are seeing more attacks on humanitarian aids, on health services. And of course, this also means, as we are seeing Israel bombarding the south of Gaza, which was supposed to be the safe place that Israel told Palestinians to go to, they're bombarding Khan Yunis, they're bombarding Rafah. And so that is also affecting the entry of aid. And so we are expecting the humanitarian situation there to deteriorate as well.
Mia, it's the month of December, and it's a particularly important time for Christian tourists to Bethlehem in preparation for Christmas. It's unlikely to happen this year. So are there any restrictions in place, first of all?
Well, there's no restrictions, but as we know, there's a lot of flights and airlines that have canceled their routes to Tel Aviv, which will affect the influx of tourists. You said that Bethlehem is important. It is considered by Christians the place of birth of Jesus, and usually at this time of the year, the first Saturday, the beginning of the Advent for Christians, a huge Christmas tree would be put up in Bethlehem, and today that did not happen, with the Christian community there in Bethlehem saying that the festivities this year will be restricted to only religious events and not for the usual parties that we see at that time of the year. And that is because they say of the killing of Palestinians in Gaza, including attacks on churches in Gaza and attacks on Christians, Palestinians as well. So a more modest celebration of Christmas this year today in that very important place for Christians everywhere in the world.
Also, Mia, well, the Red Cross's Director General had said that, people are living in constant fear of violent death and struggling to survive amid shortage of food and water. Now, surely some of the Palestinians must be putting the blame on Hamas for their plight.
Well, there are certainly Palestinians that do blame Hamas as being a risk for their safety, but a lot of them are saying that, and the majority of what we are seeing, not only from the people that we have been talking to, but also from what we are seeing from a huge protests across the world, is that, Hamas is considered a resistance movement. And, if Israel did not attack Palestine, and that's not only Gaza, but also what we are seeing in the West Bank, then Hamas would not have a reason to exist as a military group, as an extremist group, let's say so. And I think that most of the Palestinians, and at least the Palestinian Authority also, has talked a lot about international law. A lot of Palestinians are aware that according to international law, Israel is considered an occupying power, and so it has the responsibility to protect the people that they are occupying. In this case, in Gaza, they have the responsibility to provide electricity, aid, water, medicine, food, all of those things. So, majority of the Palestinians are not just, it's not a pro or Hamas situation. It is a survival situation in which they know that responsibility lies with Israel.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Mia Alberti, for joining us from Beirut, watching over the situation from Beirut in Lebanon. Now, still to come on DD India News Hour. Space surveillance intensifies on the Korean Peninsula. COP28 endorses a pact on food security. India receives the largest backing at the International Maritime Organization's Council elections.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, governments have launched new initiatives on Saturday to bolster clean energy and to wean themselves away from fossil fuels at the UN Climate Summit in Dubai, where the countries are grappling with how to halt the non-stop rise in planet warming emissions. In one of the most widely supported initiatives, 118 governments pledged to triple the world's renewable energy capacity by 2030. The pledge was among a slew of COP28 announcements on Saturday. Syed Abzarul Hassan puts this into perspective for us.
Leaders from around the world spoke at the COP28 summit on Saturday, where their nations' delegations evaluated advancements towards achieving global climate objectives. At COP28, a pact on food security was endorsed, committing 134 countries to incorporate food system into their climate strategies by 2025.
Today, 134 countries signed the UAE Food and Agriculture Declaration, which will include food systems transformation in national climate plans by 2025. And last but not by no means least, local leaders launched a coalition calling on governments to consult regional governments when formulating 134 NDCs and to increase subnational climate finance.
At the summit, US pledged $3 billion to the Green Climate Fund.
President Biden and I have made the largest climate investment in the history of our country, and some have said the world. Roughly $1 trillion over the next 10 years. As a result, today, across the United States, we are building and expanding hundreds of solar panel, wind turbine, electric vehicle, and battery manufacturing plants.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz called on the World Climate Conference to help developing nations invest in climate-friendly energy.
It is still possible for us to reduce emissions enough in this decade to meet the 1.5-degree target. But the science tells us quite clearly that we have to hurry despite all the geopolitical tension, because climate change remains the great global challenge of our time.
US climate envoy John Kerry urged companies and communities to take action to mitigate the worst consequences of the climate crisis.
We're not asking anybody to give up the quality of life. We're asking you to actually embrace a better quality of life. If you're not dying because the quality of air sucks, then you got a better quality of life. You're not being sent off as a young person to fight a war to protect the sources of your energy, where energy is now being weaponized. You got a better life. In fact, you even have a chance to stay alive.
While President Lula da Silva of Brazil cautioned that the failure to meet climate commitments was undermining the promises made in the earlier summits.
The non-fulfillment of the commitments that were taken erodes the credibility of the regime. It is necessary to rescue the belief in multilateralism. It is unexplainable that the UN, although in all its endeavors shows itself incapable of keeping peace simply because some of its members profit from war.
The major focus of the COP28 is the phasing down or phasing out of the fossil fuels, including oil and gas. But no breakthrough agreement has been achieved yet to stop global warming and fight climate change. Syed Abzarul Hassan reporting for DD India.
Amid a growing threat from North Korea, the South Koreans have launched their first spy satellite using a rocket operated by Elon Musk's SpaceX from a US military base in California. The launch on Saturday came less than 2 weeks after The rival North Korea announced it had successfully launched its own reconnaissance satellite, underscoring the accelerating space race between the two neighbors. North Korea has warned that it would consider any interference with its satellite operations a declaration of war. This after the United States had said that it has the capabilities to deny North Korean satellites space capabilities through multiple means. Seoul plans to launch 4 additional space satellites, spy satellites in fact, by the end of 2025 to bolster its reconnaissance capacity over the north.
That we've had SES1 and boost back burn startup of the first stage's entry burn.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered the country's military to increase the maximum number of troops by nearly 170,000 people. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the increase in the full-time strength of the armed forces is due to the growing threats the country faces and is associated with the special military operation and the ongoing expansion of NATO. So Putin's decree, in fact, was released by the Kremlin on Friday, and it took force immediately. It brings the strength of the armed forces to 1.32 million service personnel and increases the overall number of Russian military personnel to about 2.2 million. The former Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev, now is the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, and he said on Friday that more than 452,000 people have been recruited to the Russian military under a contract that was between January 1 and December 2023. So India has received the maximum votes among the candidates in the category of 10 states with the largest interest in international seaborne trade. This is at the 2024-25 International Maritime Organization Council elections, which were held in London on Friday. India's High Commission in London wrote on X, grateful to partners for reposing strong faith again in India. The council in the category of states with the largest interest in international seaborne trade, with a top tally of 157 votes. Piyush Goyal, India's Minister for Textiles, was the chief guest at the 81st plenary meeting of the International Cotton Advisory Committee in Mumbai. This happened Saturday. During this event, the minister unveiled the postal stamp featuring Kasturi cotton, Bharat, and a special postal cover as well. In his address, he expressed confidence that India is on track to assuming the leading role in the textile value chain. Later, during a media interaction, the Textile Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, also announced that India will host the world's largest textile exposition, the Bharat Tex 2024, from the 26th to the 29th of February 2024 in New Delhi. Bharat Tex it's poised to showcase to the world with more than 10,000 exhibitors across handlooms. They're going to show how Indian technical textiles look.
We will be hosting the world's largest textile exposition, fair, seminars and conference from 26th to 29th February 2024 in New Delhi at the iconic Bharat Mandapam, where the G20 Leaders Summit was held, and at Yashobhumi, two of the amongst the world's largest convention centers that we have now got in Delhi, thanks to Prime Minister Modi's visionary leadership, which understood that it's important we have the infrastructure to support such large exhibitions.
The Vixit Bharat Sankalp Yatra in New Delhi is helping beneficiaries to enroll in all government schemes. This initiative aims to take the government schemes and benefits to those who have been left behind. DD India correspondent Kriti Bhadera reports.
Vixit Bharat Sankalp Yatra is undertaken across the country with the aim of attaining saturation of flagship schemes of the government by ensuring that the benefits of these schemes reach all targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. In this initiative, beneficiaries are being immediately linked to many schemes like Ujjwala, Aadhaar, Abha and Ayushman cards. Making healthcare affordable and easily accessible has been the cornerstone of PM Modi's vision for a healthy India. Thereby, health checkup booths are also part of this Yatra.
This is a very good initiative of government and people are liking this concept, and from early morning there is a massive footfall in this camp.
The government strives to improve the standard of living and drive away poverty from poor families, create employment and self-employment opportunities for the youth, empower the women of India by tackling their issues and improve the income and capabilities of Indian farmers. Many panchayats have already attained saturation with the advent of Vixit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, and further information is being provided to those who were left behind. Prime Minister Narendra Modi urged the youth to register as My Bharat volunteers and join the My Bharat campaign. Kriti Vadhera for ED India.
Attending an international conference in India's Bhubaneswar, the Minister of State V. Muralidharan said that East and Northeastern region of India could attribute to the Act East policy in a big way, and East India has unprecedented resources for enhancing the pace of development. Muralidharan was addressing the international conference on Purvodaya Perspectives, Reflections on Regional Connectivity, organized by the Confederation of Indian Industries Energy Group on Saturday. And he also said that connectivity plays a crucial role in enhancing transport sector between the eastern countries. He's the Minister of State for External Affairs.
Will result in developing a roadmap on how this region can develop in the coming days, especially in connectivity, in trade, commerce, maritime sector. All these aspects in these 2 days conference will definitely play a major role in developing a roadmap of how the Eastern India, along with its neighbors, can have a rejuvenation in the global arena.
The country gears up for counting of votes on Sunday for the assembly polls in 4 states, including Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Telangana and Chhattisgarh. The counting of votes will start at 8 in the morning Indian Standard Time on Sunday, after which the seat-wise results will be declared. The assembly elections of 2023 in 5 states of India, namely Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Mizoram, Rajasthan and Telangana, came to an end on November 30. Chhattisgarh voted in 2 different phases on November 7 and November 30. The state is currently governed by the Congress party's Bhupesh Baghel since 2018. BJP's Charan Singh was the chief minister from 2003 to 2018. To elect the 230 members of the Madhya Pradesh Assembly, polling in that state took place on November 17. The Bharatiya Janata Party's Shivraj Singh Chauhan has been the chief minister since 2020. Likewise, the polling for 119 seats of Telangana was held in a single phase on November 30. The Bharat Rashtriya Samiti's K. Chandrasekhar Rao has been the chief minister since 2014. He won the elections again in 2018 and has a decent mandate. Shivraj Singh Chauhan, in fact, has been chief minister for 3 terms, except for a brief period of time between 2018 and 2020. Now, all preparations for counting of votes in the Indian state of Rajasthan have been completed. Counting of votes are going to start, as we said, at 8 in the morning on Sunday. The calculation or the counting, the tallying of the votes will be done in a total of 4,180 rounds on 250, I beg your pardon, this is 2,552 tables amid 3-tier security system. There is also going to be videography and CCTV coverage. Here's more.
A 3-layer security is guarding this counting center in Jaipur, the capital city of Rajasthan, which is the largest state of India. 36 such counting centers have been raised across the state for 199 assembly seats. 175 companies of Central Armed Police Force, along with Rajasthan Armed Constabulary and the hawk eye of closed-circuit TV cameras are guarding these centers. The counting would start at 8 o'clock. First to go would be the ballot papers, to be followed by the electronic voting machines. With cameraman Alok Gupta in Jaipur, this is Vishal Barister for DD India.
The Election Commission has deferred the counting of votes in Mizoram to December 4. The Mizo National Front's Soramthanga has been the chief minister of that state. He's been in power since 2018. He was the chief minister earlier as well, from 1998 to 2008. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. We'll discuss why the Indian economy is performing above expectations. AUKUS looks at strengthening standards of technology protection. And the spire of Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral is reinstalled 4 years after the devastating fire.
एक लंबे रक्तपात भरे युग का अंत धारा 370 के समाप्त होने से पहले।
For decades and decades, downtown area of Srinagar has always been symbolic of unrest, turbulence, turmoil, disturbances, and everything that has to do with the disruption.
पहले तो महीने में 20 दिन होता था हड़ताल, अब नहीं होती।
I'm right now standing in the middle of the Jama Masjid market, and this is how weekday here looks like.
दिन को होगा 1-2 करोड़ टर्नओवर है, बिल्कुल कैश टर्नओवर।
बंद क्या बंद? ये दुकान हालात तो बिल्कुल ठीक है, बिल्कुल ठीक है, कुछ नहीं होता है।
कश्मीर तो बेनजीर है, हीरा है, दंगा फसाद तो नहीं है।
The making of the Naya Kashmir or New Kashmir.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. And now returning to our main story on India's strong growth in the manufacturing sector, we have with us Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, senior economic journalist, and Dr. Charan Singh, eminent economist and CEO of the eGrow Foundation. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Dr. Charan Singh, does India's growth of 7.6% in the last quarter come as a surprise, or would you have expected it?
I would have expected it. The reason was that India's growth has always been underestimated. And unfortunately, there are people within the country and economists who have worked within top notches of the government. Sometimes they casting doubts on India's growth. Actually, if you live in India and you see the type of activities that are taking place, one really wonders that there is lots of vibrancy and resilience in the Indian economy. All types of activities, all types of work is up there, though the CMI data sometimes show us the unemployment figures, but if you compare them with the PLFS data, the periodic labor force surveys, they're very different. If you see it in real life, you see so much of activity going on. So therefore, I was expecting that what the RBI had actually predicted in their monetary policy, that in Q2 it will be 6.5. I was very sure it's going to be larger than that.
Right. Okay.
Look at the traffic at the airports, look at the train traffic, look at the output that's being produced, look at the informal sector, the activities that are taking place. Obviously, as it meets the eye, you would see the growth was expected to be high, and that's what it translated to.
Mr. Bhattacharjee, so, I mean, given what Dr. Singh has been saying, why are economists also optimistic about the PMI continuing to grow in 2024? How healthy is this demand going to, is it going to sustain?
Yeah, that's an interesting part. I mean, as of now, what has happened is that the economies, if you look at in terms of the credit growth from the banks, that has really started shaping up. So if you start looking that from the last year and a half, then obviously the manufacturing expansion that's happening is not surprising, because the sustained rise in credit has gradually built into more working capital cycle, and therefore that is pushing the manufacturing. So I would expect the manufacturing's output growth to continue. If you look at the car sales figures, which is always a very good leading indicator, and remember, car sales is not just about selling to the richer income groups.
Yes.
Car has got a very long tail in terms of what it does to lots of companies, especially in the small and medium enterprises. So that creates a long manufacturing cycle.
Okay,
so that is something that is useful.
So the components as well, and all the raw materials and the supply part chain and so. But Dr. Singh, how do you view the business confidence over the next 12 months?
So continuing from what the figure which was just being discussed about the car sales and commercial vehicles, you know that I have been always saying that housing sector has interlinkages, inter-industry linkages, forward and backward to the extent of about 270 to 280 industries. The next comes cars. So working in Bangalore at I used to be discussing with the Toyotas, and many times they would tell me the interlinkages are so high with commercial vehicles or in the car manufacturing that once you find that some of these leading indicators, which has just been mentioned, you find then the backward effects are also very high. Given that fact, now if you look at what's happening in the Indian economy, we look at the 8 core sector, 8 core industries, they've been performing very well. You look at the IIP data, that's also performing very well, in the manufacturing especially. That is the reason that you find that the confidence in the Indian economy is very, very high. And people are happy, people are comfortable with whatever be the political cycle that is there is stability there. And I think that's something very important which everybody has to factor in. The rest of the world is factoring in. The second point which I found is that whatever said and done, whatever be the circumstances, there is a support mechanism to the industrial production that is taking. That is being discussed. And as far as the purchasing power is concerned, or demand for goods that are being produced in the manufacturing sector is concerned, you would have noticed that this is happening. Again, the free food or food subsidy for 5 years is being extended. So to that extent, purchasing power is there in the hands of the people, and they can spend on manufacturing.
Fair enough. Mr. Bhattacharjee, then how much of does manufacturing growth? You've talked about the different other component manufacturer and all those who are actually impacted. But how much of it does this impact employment generation as a whole? Dr. Singh was talking about purchasing power.
Yeah, employment generation, the latest figures are rather interesting. I mean, actually, it's fallen, unemployment. So it does show that the amount of unemployment, which was sort of staying as a very strong overhang, is sort of tapering out. Now, further strengthening of that should come from the next round of RBI data on consumption.
Okay.
So if you see consumption rising, consumption as of now, private consumption has been flat, about 56% or so. And if you see that figure rising, that I would say is the secret sauce, because that would mean that the consumers are feeling confident to be able to purchase more. And this has a very strong impact on the economy. It has not happened yet, but what has happened is that the unemployment figures have come down. And that itself is a striking figure. You also see another thing that's happening along with, which Dr. Charan Singh was pointing out, which was the fact that the governments at the state and especially at the center have extended what is called the iron basket, the food security scheme, to the people. So that provides a safety net. And that's a very important safety net for people to factor in their daily lives as they decide on their income and decision between income and savings. So we shall be seeing a lot of variations now. What you're essentially very clearly seeing is that the Indian economy is now not only the fastest growing one, but also the most interesting one because of the size of the economy. It's a hugely expanding one. What needs to be seen is that how further will this expansion of growth occur? I mean, is it just simply picking up on the slack of the pandemic? Well, the pandemic is long behind us. Yes. So quarter by quarter, you're actually seeing steady growth coming along over and over again. So So abstracting from, say, figure of 7.6, what you should look at is essentially that the economy's growth rate is continuing to sustain. And in this world, when the average is around 2.4 or something, averaging anything above 6 is a huge jump. And that is the big takeaway.
It's also very broad-based. Dr. Charan Singh, any concerns regarding inflation, especially with price shocks likely from the wars that are currently on in Ukraine and the Middle East?
This is very surprising in our own country. While others have been talking about it, but the latest data that came out on inflation, if you look at the industrial workers, just came out a few days back. It's the overall is around 4.5, 4.4, 4.5, and the food is around 6.3. So that food is little high up there. But if you look at the data on CPI as well as the WPI, I don't see anything of concern there. But I want to mention one thing which you had asked me earlier, and I think there's something important I want to share with you. If you look at the GST collection, this is the highest in this year, and it's around 15% year on year. Now, for some time, the economists were telling me that, look, the GST collection is almost matching the CPI and WPI, and therefore, you can't see much into the GST collection. It's just keeping a certain pace. Now, that argument doesn't hold this time now. GST collection is much higher than your inflation. So it's not that GST is keeping pace with inflation. Yes. Even if you look at the direct tax collections, which has happened, both corporate IT and personal IT, they are also recording a growth rate of about 30% or 18% respectively. So therefore, the confidence of the people in manufacturing, in industry, and in general is really high.
Sure, I'm running short of time. Mr. Bhattacharjee, India's PMI has hit a lifetime high of 58.90 in the past. Currently, it's at 56. So what are the chances of reaching a new lifetime high?
No, let's not look at those, because you see, those are survey numbers, and they tend to fluctuate a lot on a month-on-month basis, because that is a purchasing managers index survey going forward of what they expect. The fact that the numbers are showing expansion, and a very clear expansion, is a very important indicator that essentially they are pushing for growth further. This is something that is going to help us around. So that itself, as well as we discussed a lot of the leading indicators, including electricity consumption, these are showing that the economy is reaching the fairly strong strength of its capacity and will be pushing on towards capacity expansion very soon.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Shubhomay Bhattacharjee and Dr. Charan Singh. Thank you for enlightening us on India's strong economic performance. Now, continuing, the top defense officials from the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia held a meeting. It was a joint press briefing after that. And at that press briefing, they talked about providing an update on the Australia-United Kingdom United States Security Partnership, AUKUS. So during that briefing, the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that implementing strong standards of technology protection is going to reduce the barriers to sharing information and technology.
And through Pillar 2, we have leveraged our respective defense innovation and industry sectors to develop and deliver advanced capabilities so that our warfighters can hear, see, and act with decisive advantage. And by implementing strong standards of technology protection, we are reducing barriers to sharing information and technology. And we're streamlining our processes to deliver these capabilities and lead our partnership forward for the next generation.
The United States has unveiled rules that aim to keep Chinese components out of the electric cars sold in the U.S. The U.S. government proposed the new rules on Friday that could make it harder for electric vehicles to qualify for a full $7,500 federal tax credit, $7,500 federal tax credit, complicating efforts to meet President Joe Biden's goal that could halt the new passenger vehicles sold in the U.S. Which are run on electricity by 2030. The spire of Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral has been reinstalled a key part of the reconstruction process. The cathedral was badly damaged in a major fire in 2019, and during that blaze, the spire had collapsed through the fallen roof of the building. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
The fire in April 2019 was devastating. The roof of the cathedral going up in flames and burning for hours as the city and the world watched, fearing if one of France's most famous monuments would be completely destroyed. The blaze broke out in the early evening and caused extensive damage throughout the medieval Catholic cathedral, though the fire service did manage to save the two huge bell towers. Later that same evening, the president addressed the nation, pledging to rebuild the cathedral in just 5 years. Now, despite the new spire still being encased in scaffolding, it's some 96 metres high and made of oak, the authority overseeing the rebuilding process does say the spire will be visible before Christmas. Now, the new spire is identical to the old one, which was designed by 19th century architect Viollet-le-Duc. You can also see behind me lots of cranes, and there is a lot of reconstruction work still to be done, including rebuilding the nave inside the cathedral. And it's only after that is finished that the reconstruction work of the roof can begin. Notre Dame de Paris, or Our Lady of Paris in English, was founded more than 850 years ago and is seen as a symbol of the country. In August, the President, Emmanuel Macron, said that the cathedral would fully reopen on December the 8th next year. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
Well, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Nadal is set to return to competitive tennis. Vaishali Ramesh Babu becomes India's 84th Grandmaster. And Bangladesh have defeated the former World Test champions New Zealand in the first test at Sylhet. India celebrates Festival of Democracy. Crucial election results of 4 states of India: Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Telangana. DD India reports from Ground Zero. Get authentic election news, views and analysis. 8 a.m. onwards or 2:30 a.m. GMT. Only on DD India, a voice of credibility. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The Indian Space Research Organization has achieved another milestone as it activated the second instrument on the Indian solar spacecraft Aditya L1. And sharing an update about this on Saturday, the Indian Space Agency said that the Aspects payload on board India's Aditya L1 satellite has commenced its operation and has started performing normally. The sample histogram image was shared by the Indian Space Research Organization, illustrating the energy variations in proton and alpha particle counts captured by SWIS over 2 days in November 2023. Now, Aditya L1, India's first dedicated solar mission, was launched into space on September 2 from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in India's Sriharikota. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for the sports news. And the former tennis great, the former world #1, Rafael Nadal, is going to return to the courts. He's doing so at the Brisbane International warm-up event for the Australian Open, and of course the Australian Open's in January. The 22-time Grand Slam champion was absent from the courts for almost a year with a hip injury, and he has not played a competitive match since bowing out in the second round of this year's Australian Open when hampered by a hip flexor problem. Nadal will try to return to the highest level that is in the Australian Open, with the aim of competing at the French Open as well, where he has the best record ever. 14 times he's won it, and he has been overtaken since in the total number of Grand Slam tournaments by the Serbian great as well, world number 1 current, Novak Djokovic, who has 24 majors to his name. Vaishali Ramesh Babu has become India's 84th Grandmaster. She's the third Indian woman to achieve the Grandmaster title. Vaishali and Pragnananda are officially the first ever sister and brother duo of Grandmasters. Vaishali started with 2 consecutive wins in the Ayo Brigat Open in Spain, and she crossed the 2,500 rating mark to become a Grandmaster. Vaishali had scored her first Grandmaster norm in the Extracon Open in 2019. She scored a second norm, winning the 8th Fisher Memorial in 2022, and her third and final GM norm was at the Qatar Masters in 2023. Well, Bangladesh achieved a historic 150-run triumph over the former World Test champions New Zealand in their inaugural test in Sylhet on Saturday. This is Bangladesh's second ever win over New Zealand and the first at home. Earlier, Bangladesh had conceded a 7-run lead in the first innings. The stand-in skipper Najmul Hussain Shanto's century and 50s from Mushfiqur Rahim and Mehdi Hassan helped the Tigers set up a daunting 332-run target for the 4th innings, and Bangladesh also took a 1-0 lead. And this is a 2-match series with this win. The next test is going to be played in Dhaka, starts the 6th of December. Comprehensive win there by Bangladesh. In fact, good news for all Bangladesh cricket supporters to see this win. Now, the International Olympic Committee has named the French Alps as its preferred host for the 2030 Winter Olympics, with Salt Lake City set for the 2034 Games. It means that France is going to host 2 games within the space of 6 years. The Paris Summer Olympics are in 2024, and would now have the Winter Olympics once again in 6 years' time. Let's look at this report.
France's 2030 Winter Olympics bid and Salt Lake City's 2030 proposal were picked as preferred host and will undergo into the dialogue with the International Olympic Committee. The IOC on Wednesday stated that the bid leaders will intensify talks with the IOC, fleshing out plans and state support with the Olympic governing body to decide on the 2030 and 2034 host at its session in July 2024.
The Executive Board today followed the recommendation of the Future Host Commission to invite the French Alps and Salt Lake City, Utah, into respective targeted dialogues to host the Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games 2030 and 2034. So we recommend a double allocation for the next winter editions. The IOC will now start more detailed discussions with the preferred hosts, led by their NOCs, with the aim to award the 2 editions at the 142nd IOC session in July in Paris.
The French bid scored points for its plan to host the Games in the 4 separate clusters, as well as for its strong support from the public and private sector.
In addition, the IOC Executive Board decided to grant the non-edition specific project Switzerland 23X a special status by inviting it into privileged dialogue for the Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games 2038.
Salt Lake City had initially wanted to bid for the 2030 Games, but dropped plan due to its being too close to the 2028 Summer Games in Los Angeles. It is not the first time in recent years that IOC had sought long-term security with a double allocation, having picked Paris 2024 Summer Games and LA for the 2028 edition back in 2017.
French Alps and Salt Lake City have to do the homework. If the homework is done, the bid will come to the IOC session and there will be the final decision.
Switzerland and Sweden had also expressed interest in hosting the 2030 Games and was invited to a privileged dialogue for the 2038 Winter Games, with the bid to working with the IOC until 2027, when a decision for a preferred host will be taken.
Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, which was formerly Twitter, and on Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.